Hello and welcome back. Before we get to part 2, Real Talk, please allow us to fulfill our capitalistic duty and plug our Patreon, the Contrarian Supplements.
That's right. For a small fee, you too can help the Contrarians rage on.
We have tiers ranging from just $1 to $10. It all depends on how much content you can handle.
Starting at $1, it's the Travolta's tier, which gets you access to new bonus episodes focusing on a new movie every month, as well as access to the patron chat. Join other patrons in making fun of our opinions.
Moving up to $3 is the Winoni's tier, which unlocks access to our pre-recording notes, our video reviews, and our spin-off show, Contrarians After Hours.
That's a more laid-back space where we talk about other things we've been watching, reading, playing, thinking about. Sometimes it's related to the movies being covered in the main feed, but it usually isn't.
If you want to be part of those patrons who help us shape the show by telling us which movies to tackle, that's when you sign up for the $5 tier, the Embries, and the $10, the Gads.
Finally, all supplement subscribers, regardless of the tier, get access to our archive of special patron projects. Head over to patreon.com/contrarianprime now to join.
Be sure to listen through the end of the episode to find out what's coming up to the Contrarian Supplements this month. Now, it's time for some Real Talk. All right, Julio, before we get into Real Talk for the apartment, which I'm very excited about, our Twitter followers and people who follow us on social media may be privy to this, but I wanted to go ahead and discuss an upcoming project we have here on the Contrarians that in no way will change our regular schedule will still go on. So don't think that this is mixing up the formula at all. It's something we've gotten way ahead of at the time of recording of this. It's not even the middle of November, and we're more than halfway done with this project. Come January, and these episodes will be released sequentially in time with their 20th anniversary. It's going to be the 20th anniversary of the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, which was a reality television show that aired on Spike TV in 2005. The Ultimate Fighter being presented by the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC as it's known now. And the UFC now, those of y'all listening to this may be familiar with names such as John Jones, Conor McGregor, obviously for better or worse, usually worse.
Future Secretary of Defense Dana White.
Oh, dude, yeah. The president of the UFC, Dana White, who at the time of recording, we just finished the election, and it's not a joke to say that he was fairly instrumental in getting a lot of dumb, impressionable dudes to vote for Donald Trump. So he became a character of note and will likely continue to be so. But there's also, Contrarians legends like Ronda Rousey, who is for a period of time was a household name because of her exposure from the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And, George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, we could go down the list here of the famed champions. Two that we'll be talking about specifically for this series is Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture. This television show, this reality series, aired at a time when the UFC was not what it is now. ESPN was not picking up on UFC. They were not airing them weekly, anything like that. The UFC, as we'll discuss in the episode, and you can look forward to, their business was not looking too good going into 2005. And in many ways, this reality TV show that aired on Spike TV was the Hail Mary for that company. And it paid off. And for those of you who end up tuning into the series, you'll find out in painstaking detail how that happened, why that happened. And because of that first season of The Ultimate Fighter, the face of sports and, generally speaking, pop culture was changed forever. So it's a bit different than what we typically do on the Contrarians. And by a bit, I mean completely. It's going to be a 14-part series. The episodes will be around, sometimes a little less than an hour. And we're doing an episode for each episode that aired in the series, which was 12. The finale, episode 13, and then we'll be doing like a retrospective and a Where Are They Now, following up on all of the, I guess you could say, characters in the show.
That's the one with the still to be recorded Dana White interview.
That's right. The tell-all Rolling Stone interview. Because if there's someone Dana White would talk to, it's definitely two fucking bleeding liberals like myself and Julio. But it was a 16-man tournament they had here, divided into by 8 in the 2 weight classes.
This is just for people that are not as familiar with the UFC history as you are, Alex. This is after the Battle of the Tough Guys, right?
Outstanding reference. Yes, this was after Rip Thomas and Zeus went to war, as Kurt Fuller ended up getting electrocuted to death on the pay-per-view broadcast. For those of you who don't know shit from apple butter about the Ultimate Fighting Championship or MMA in general, do not worry. It's a full history lesson because it's not just myself. The Contrarians are being joined by 2 friends and supporters of the show, and 2 voices that provide some historical context, that being Joel Holbert, Joe. At this point, I call him Joel so much as a joke that I can't shake it. Joe Holbert of the Late Night Grin, a friend of the show, and Steve, not Dr. Death Williams, who, if I haven't given him direct citing, I know I've quoted him throughout some of the shows. Friend of mine and a supporter of the show. So it's a 4-man panel, so to speak. Julio provides the insight of the guy who has no knowledge of this and is just kind of along for the ride. And believe me when I say the results that have come from that so far have been delightful. Myself and Joe and Steve have been very careful to make sure we don't spoil anything for Julio, and some of the reactions have been so genuine and so great. But it is a film podcast after all, Julio, so every episode, make sure to touch on the trends of the time, and we make sure to talk about what was the top movies at the box office. We talk about the songs that were at the top of the charts, and we try to offer a little bit for everybody. So, because I can tell you, some of the people listening to this that are some of our loudest and proudest supporters, MMA is not their bag, but I think everyone will be able to take something away from it. It's something I'm really excited about. And like I said, if it's not for you, that's fine, because our regular episodes ain't going nowhere. It'll come out on the Contrarians podcast feed, just like anything else. Just wanted to go ahead and give y'all a heads up so you don't see this and like, Tough 20, what the fuck is this? So,
yeah. And like Alex says, I mean, I am happy to be the audience surrogate. If you're not an MMA person, don't worry, because that's what I'm there for, to ask the questions and question the logic and just be perplexed by what's going on. I do like certain reality TV shows, which I think gave me a little bit of an entry point into this. It is a competition in the end. There's very specific art of storytelling, I think, when it comes to reality show. Like, even if stuff is not staged, it is still manipulated in the edit. So because, to fit a narrative that will make the episodes more exciting. And I think that we see that that's a constant discussion as the episodes go on, as we watch this season. So yeah, I think that if you like movies and you like listening to us talk about movies, I think that there's a pretty good chance that you'll just enjoy us discuss this competition. And Steve and Joel are very funny and very insightful. Very different takes certainly from me and also from Alex. So yeah, I think it's going to be fun. And I would encourage any Contrarian listener to check it out when it drops.
The first episode for the series is going to drop on January 17th of next year. So as I mentioned, we're a bit ahead of schedule here, and that's going to take us up through, I believe, WrestleMania weekend, which we did not time it that way, but the midpoint of April of 2025. And along the way, for our wonderful patrons, there will be a couple of bonus episodes of myself and Julio talking about movies, because it is a movie podcast after all. We're going to be discussing MMA-centric films, specifically Never Back Down from 2008 and the Halle Berry passion project Bruised from 2020, in which Halle Berry goes to war with then and current UFC women's champion Valentina Shevchenko. So much to come. We're going to be promoting that on our social media pages, so I don't want to drown y'all out each episode with this. So just wanted to go ahead and explain what was coming. Once we drop those episodes on Patreon, of course, we'll circle back to promoting those. But I hope y'all join us and enjoy the ride we go on here with the 20-year-old problematic reality television. But for now, we're going to go back farther than 20 years, Julio. We're going to go back, I believe I said 65 years would have been the time frame for this. 1960, The Apartment.
Speaking of problematic.
Yes, but I would argue this is aged much better than The Ultimate Fighter.
Oh, Miss Kubelik? I've been waiting for you.
Yeah.
I almost didn't recognize you. This is the first time I've ever seen you so many clothes.
How'd everything go on the 27th floor?
Oh, you're great. Look, have you seen The Music Man?
Nope.
Would you like to?
Sure.
I thought maybe we'd get a bite to eat first, and then we go.
Oh, you mean tonight?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't. I'm meeting somebody.
Oh, you mean like a girlfriend?
No, like a man.
I wasn't trying to be personal. It's just the fellas in the office. They were wondering about you, you know, if you ever...
You tell him now and then.
This date, is it just a date or is it something serious?
Well, it used to be serious. At least I was, but he wasn't. So now the whole thing's more or less kaput.
Well, in that case, couldn't you...
No, I'm afraid not. I promised I'd have a drink with him. He's been calling me all week.
Billy Wilder, written and directed, produced as well. I mentioned in the first portion, June of 1960, budget of $3 million, box office return of approximately $25 million. It did win Best Picture at the 1961 Academy Awards. Now, for its contenders and other Oscars it took home, you'll have to tune in to our warm-up over on our YouTube page. But Julio, needless to say, this is definitely revered as a classic, contemporarily and in hindsight.
Would you say, just based on your awareness of the Billy Wilder cult of personality, would you say The Apartment comes up as maybe part of his top 3?
I always think of Some Like It Hot. Is that one that you would consider?
Yeah, so basically, I always think Sunset Boulevard, Double Indemnity, Some Like It Hot, The Apartment. But if you can only have 3... which one's the one that gets knocked off?
Well, which ones have a criterion? Let's start there. You have Double Indemnity.
Yeah.
Some Like It Hot. Does Sunset Boulevard?
It might not. So
well, The Apartment doesn't either.
Oh, well.
So we're no better off here than we were 30 seconds ago.
I want to say, as far as penetrating pop culture, I think Sunset Boulevard has more of a legacy.
That's fair.
Everybody knows I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. And everybody knows Gloria Swanson as kind of an iconic character. I don't know that anybody knows CeCe Baxter as charming and funny as Jack Lemmon is. So maybe The Apartment comes like number 4. And look, I'm obviously... This is coming from somebody who hasn't watched any of the Billy Wilder movies. This is literally, we're talking about that. The 4 that I've watched are the ones that I guess I would consider his top 4 as far as like awareness. But I know he's done like a bunch of other stuff. And someday I'll go down my Billy Wilder journey and start like knocking them out. But in the meantime, I kind of feel like this was a nice expansion of the Billy Wilder universe in my head. And I'm actually pretty interested to hear what your take is, Alex. But before we get there, I have 3 rotten quotes. I'm going to start with John Beaufort from the Christian Science Monitor, who says, Billy Wilder's The Apartment is a sometimes amusing but basically unpalatable mixture of farce, social satire, and romantic comedy. Sometimes amusing, but only sometimes. Is that when Jack Lemmon is dancing?
I guess.
I really like when he's dancing with the married woman at the bar. And
oh, yeah.
So you see him from behind at first, and it's not until the camera turns or they turn that you see that his arm is just like hanging. He's not holding her. It's just like they're cheek to cheek, but they're not like hugging each other. It's
his face, like just the 100-yard stare in front of him when all those like straw wrappers are getting blown at him. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Speaking of Jack Lemmon, the Guardian staff from The Guardian says, however funny Mr. Lemmon may be, this really is not a funny situation. I mean, it is at first. It's not like Shirley MacLaine actually died. They saved her. So it's still a comedy.
Sound logic.
Yep. And then we're going to close with Dan Jardine from Apollo Guide, who says, this cynical study of office politics and sexual mores by Billy Wilder, despite winning 5 Oscars in 1960, doesn't date well. Taking us back to how we opened this conversation with a very surprising comparison to The Ultimate Fighter and its problematic aging. Okay, well, let's start there, Alex. Do you think this is aged well in this same way that, we did Double Indemnity. And that movie, I think, aged really well. And we both watched Some Like It Hot. Like, it's been a while for me, but I think that for the most part, I think it would hold up if I watched it today, and then I think Sunset Boulevard is amazing. Like, that's, you could make that movie today without changing anything almost, and it would be fine, I think. How about this? How about The Apartment, Alex? Is it, like, does it have to be set in the 50s to work? That's why you give it a pass? Or does it not even work now if it's set in the 50s? Like, talk to me about it. Like, were you watching and you're really thinking, yes, but we wouldn't make this movie today?
Not really. I mean, because in the end, like, Sheldrick and all these assholes get what's coming to them. Like, their comeuppance is, well, Sheldrick specifically, the other guys kind of just fade away into the background. And I guess the brother-in-law who beats up Cece gets away with it. Yeah, I don't know. There's aspects of this, the womanizing and shit, that I imagine the dialogue, if we were making this movie today, we'd have to change up the dialogue a little bit. But I mean, there's still plenty of movies about infidelity and shit like that. Aside from like laughing at how laissez-faire they were about, cheating on their wives, I didn't see too much that was like an issue with this. It does jar you a little bit with the tonal shift, but I mean, spoiler, I thought this was outstanding. And I thought the dialogue they exchange about, why they feel as low as they do and why they think their worth is as low as it is, it's definitely dialogue that was written for a movie made in the late 50s and early 60s, but it's the message. You could still make the same movie. Would you have to change the dialogue a bit? Yes. And I don't mean that in the sense of like there's no like really hate language or anything like that. Right. It's just the way it's delivered is a little bit different. But I think you can make a movie with this exact same message.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I was just trying to get in the mindset of somebody like this last dude that we just quoted. Let's say that the movie doesn't date well. And it's like, what exactly is it that doesn't date well? And I think, I joked a little bit about it in Contrarian's Corner about how like the happy ending almost feels like Shirley MacLaine is settling, right? Mm-hmm. I think that in 2024, what would feel like a true happy ending is her kicking Fred McMurray to the curb and then just going on to live her life. There's just like, it's just very old fashioned to have her come back to Jack Lemmon, who is not really like Jack Lemmon's talking about marrying her, after hanging out for 2 days. And that feels kind of very
that feels more of that time period. Yeah.
But then what I was thinking is, if you were to make this movie today, there's two ways of making it, right? Like, one is you set it in the 50s. You're still making it in 2024, but you set it in the 50s. And I think that a lot of the stuff would be easier to accept. Or you set it in present day, 2024. And that, I think that it makes it so much harder. You would have to, like, I can't.
Smartphones.
Well, yeah. But I was just thinking about the concept of grown men. Like the fact that all this revolves around one apartment and these adults that have actual jobs constantly jockeying for an opportunity to get into that apartment. I was like, dude, get a room somewhere else, right? Like it makes it so much easier knowing that this is an older movie, that it's set, at an older time, because I can just disconnect myself from that little bit of logic and be like, well, that's just how it is.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dobish. I'd like to help you fellas out, but it's sort of late, so why don't we make it some other time?
Listen, kid, I can't pass this up. She looks like Marilyn Monroe.
Can you imagine trying to buy that like today? For one, I think that you would have to make it a younger cast. Like you can maybe buy that behavior from younger people, like teenagers or really early 20s.
I don't know. We're millennials. We're stupid,
Just people that don't have anywhere else. Somebody that can tell you, look, I am too broke to go to a hotel room. So please, let me crash at your place. Let me use your place for like 30 minutes.
I don't know if I've ever been in a situation like this where it seemed necessary to like find the closest bed that I could find. I don't know. But
see, that is, I think, at the core of that question of, I wouldn't say that it ages poorly. It's just more like the concept is just so outlandish.
It also makes it seem hilariously like New York City's 2 blocks. Like it's all right. If we're not here, we're over here.
Right. That Chinese restaurant is like literally across the street from Jack Lemmon's apartment.
It's the lower level of Jack Lemmon's apartment.
Yeah. I mean, this is just, I'm just spitballing why somebody could have trouble, buying into the premise, just because it's just so removed from how we know things to be today. Who is going through all this trouble to get into his coworker's apartment just to have sex for 30 minutes? So there's that. And then I think the other thing that maybe people could say, maybe this worked back in the 60s, but it doesn't work today, and I don't know if that's accurate, is that idea of setting an almost successful suicide attempt right in the middle of the movie and then having it sort of drive the rest of the story in the second half. How do you feel about that? Because I think we both agree that it's kind of a left turn, but I get the feeling that it works better for you than it does for me.
Yes, because one of my favorite movies of all time is Almost Famous, where this exact same thing happens. It's a comedy of sorts that has some kind of unrealistic ideals behind it, and then at the beginning of the third act, our main female character tries to kill herself by taking a bunch of Quaaludes. So you'll forgive me if it's a bit easier for me to process.
Yeah, but
I'm joking with you, and I'm joking, and I'm having fun with the things we're talking about. But yeah, this movie is fantastic, and it's, if you want to, you can pick at all these things, but not one time when I was watching this movie was I like finding myself removed from the universe that this movie takes place in, which is always the hallmark of a great film, is that you don't find issue with what's in front of you. It's very easy to, like we're doing right now. I did laugh out loud when he's like, you take a girl out for a few laughs, the next thing you know, she wants you to leave your wife. And I was like, Jesus, dude. Like, I thought that was pretty intense. But aside from that, yeah, it seems as though you had a harder time losing yourself in the moment of this movie than I did.
Only once we got to the suicide. I mean, for all my nitpicking about the apartment gimmick, like that part, I just thought it was a really funny setup for a comedy. And so I was all in. Just the idea that this movie was going to be about Jack Lemmon trying to manage the constant traffic that's going through his apartment and falling in love with Shirley MacLaine, and then having to somehow explain that to her, even up to the point where like, oh, she's actually dating my boss, but my boss wants to use the apartment, like all that stuff. I'm like, this reads like a comedy. And then, like you, I was never disengaged. I was always watching it, and I was laughing, and I was kind of curious to see what was going to happen next. But I became aware that at some point I was just thinking like, oh my God, we're still talking about the suicide. this is going to be a thing for the rest of the movie, which, I mean, it should be. From the moment that it's taken seriously, then obviously you just need to carry through. But I was surprised because it just felt like a different movie from the very carefree beginning. We're just having fun with sex, or just the fact that these grown men are behaving like teenagers. And I think that the way that the movie makes fun of just the politics of that era, of that time, right? Like it's shocking to hear Fred McMurray and Ray Walston and all the other executives refer to women the way they do, but it also, I think that it's heightened because we know that we don't do that, and so it kind of makes you laugh in a way just because it's so outrageous. There are some things that are not funny. Like when he gives her the $100, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's not meant to be funny though.
Right. But that's what I mean. No, because what I'm saying is like, there's something that would make me laugh just like because of the shock of it happening. Right.
Oh,
like,
I see what you mean.
Yeah. And even that line that you were quoting, it's funny because it's followed up by, he says, it just isn't fair. And Jack Lemmon says, I agree, especially to your wife.
Yeah.
Which is, it's great. That's great writing. But anyway, there's the suicide attempt, and then it's just not funny in the same way. And I think that I was very aware for the rest of the movie that it was not as funny. And the change to the Shirley MacLaine character really, it just bummed me out. It's like I said in Controller's Corner, it makes sense. I get where she's coming from. I get where they're going with it. In a way, I actually kind of admire the representation of this character that's very like bubbly and very clever and has a very positive outlook, right? When you first meet her in the first, act of the movie or so. And then you see her crumble and you get to see her demons. And that's very interesting to see in a movie. And it's also, I think, it's something that happens in real life, right? Like how many times do you meet somebody and then once you actually get to know them a little better, you start peeling away what they project to the outside and you start realizing, oh man, they're just as fucked up as I am, right? And I think that's what we see with the Fran character. We get to see everything that's haunting her, and I mean, it's pretty ugly and it's meant to be ugly, but it takes me out of the comedy side of it a little bit. I get it. You make sense, but this is not funny. And I was having so much fun before when it was just about people using Jack Lemmon's apartment to have sex.
You don't find that like an interesting thing about the movie, though? Like thinking about now what I do all the time, as you know, is, well, man, like put yourself in the shoes of someone who was watching this in 1960. Do you think the audience that like the seriousness of this would have resonated, or do you think they're just too busy kind of laughing at the follies?
Man, I would hope that everybody took kind of like a deep breath halfway through the movie when she almost died. I mean, the pratfalls, they slow down a lot once we get to this middle sequence where she's just staying at Jack Lemmon's apartment. And, there's some funny stuff like him cooking the spaghetti with the tennis racket and
straining the spaghetti with the tennis racket.
Draining the spaghetti. Yes, I'm sorry.
Are we dressing for dinner?
Just come as you are.
So you're pretty good with that racket.
You should see my backhand.
There is a little bit of comedy, but for the most part, it's just like it's just not funny. And it's not meant to be funny. When she's talking about how she's just going to give it all up and what's the point of falling in love, just even the idea.
That line's so heartbreaking. She's like, why do you even fall in love with people? It's like, oh man. Yeah.
And then just the fact that the doctor plants the seed, not just in Jack Lemmon's head, but also in our head, that, well, she's done it and it's very likely she's going to try to do it again. So that definitely, I think, affects the way that the rest of the movie plays. I mean, I was pretty sure we were going to get to a happy ending. I was never, I was like, there's no way that they don't end up together. I was pretty sure that it was going to be that type of story, but I guess it went from being really funny all the time to only being funny sporadically in that second half. And that took me out of it a little bit. Something that helps a lot is the Shirley MacLaine performance. How do you feel about watching young Shirley MacLaine leading a romantic comedy in the 60s?
Well, to begin with, insert GIF of cartoon wolf here howling.
Yes.
Shirley MacLaine, my God. I mean, it's
respectfully, not like, but yes, that GIF.
Yeah, respectfully, exactly. Cowboy hat emoji here. She's great. One of the lines I had written down, like I quoted, when the first time that Cece kind of approaches her to ask her out, is like, you going out? And she says, no, I'm meeting a friend. And he asks, like, a girlfriend? And she goes, no. He goes, oh, well, some of the guys have just said it. And she starts walking away and she says, you tell them now and then. Like, I was like, oh, that's so badass. And she has the best line of the movie at the end where she tells her delivery of one of the things we didn't really, because I couldn't figure out how to use it in Contrarian's Corner, is one of the quirks of CC Baxter's character is wise. He puts wise at the end of sentences, meaning like, that's the way it crumbles cookie wise. That's like one of the lines he has. Or and at one point he says, or otherwise wise. And she tells him, I'm not going out with McMurray, his character's name, it evades me now, but I'm not going out with him quite yet until everything's finalized divorce wise. And they kind of have this kind of, somber chuckle together. Yeah. But the best line in the whole movie to me is because we learn that she can't spell earlier because she was going to be a secretary and she can type, but she can't spell. That was what she said. And when McMurray's their final dinner together, he's like, well, what's the problem? She says, I'd spell it out for you, but I can't spell. I was like, oh, like that's movie magic right there, man. That's the art of it all. And yeah, I think tonally and some of the places the story goes work for us on varying scales, but I think she's just fantastic throughout. Obviously, Shirley MacLaine not letting the cat out of the bag here by saying she's a great actress. Very, very, very complimentary of her performance in Walter Mitty. And I know that's not, she probably wouldn't even put that at the top of her list of accomplishments or anything like that. I don't know who would, but for me, like her performance in that is so special to me. And so to do that in this podcast and give it its propers and then go back, 60 years before to this. And I guess at the time that was released, it would have been like 55 years or 53, but I think she's just tremendous in this. I don't think there's a weak performance in this, but she's just so captivating. Every second she was on screen, like I was wanting to know what she was going to say or do next, or hoping that, she was going to survive. So there was more to her character. This is the art, the decision to have this in black and white too is, Wizard of Oz was 21 years before this, so like there's plenty of time to utilize color and shit, and I think this just works so much better in black and white. I don't know, I'm kind of rambling, and that's what I tend to do when like a movie kind of overtook me, and that's what happened here, and a big part of that is her performance in this. I think she's wonderful.
Do you think just before I forget about the black and white, do you think Billy Wilder was better at selling the idea of keeping his movies in black and white better than Bogdanovich?
Financially, critically, or both? Yes.
I'm with you about Shirley MacLaine. It was the revelation. I mean, it's one of those things that happens whenever we do older movies on this podcast, and I have to reconcile the idea of an older actor with what they were like when they were young. Sometimes it's really easy, and sometimes it's almost like a completely different person. I mean, somewhat recently, Cloris Leachman, right? Seeing her in Last Picture Show, I was like, oh my God, that's, she's young. Even though she's playing the older woman in that story, but still, she's young compared to what I'm thinking of a Cloris Leachman character. And it's very similar to Shirley MacLaine in the sense that I grew up thinking of them as just like the senior citizen actress, right? Like she's playing a grandma or like an older person. And here she is very young and playing a very different kind of character. And it just blew me away because I guess I wasn't ready. I'd never even seen a clip of this movie to where I could know what she looked like. It was more, I had to do the double take where I guess that's Shirley MacLaine. It has to be Shirley MacLaine. And she's just so funny. And I remember if we'd already started recording when you made the Manic Pixie Dream comment, because it is in that ballpark, but it's not, right? She's not. Yeah. She's not a Manic Pixie Dream girl. They pull her back. She's very quick-witted, and I think she has some quirks, but not like the quirks are not the character. So I think she's just a very lively character, and I think that's why I also have a problem. Not a problem, but I have a resistance to what happens to her in the middle of the movie, because I feel like that energy, even though, again, it makes sense, the energy goes down, and that stuff that I was enjoying from her, which was just how she kept matching, like verbally, she kept matching everybody, right?
Yeah.
The guy that, one of the assholes that uses Jack Lemmon's apartments, he slaps her ass as he's getting off the elevator. And the way that she talks to him, and she's like, one of these days, I'm just going to close the doors on your hand. And then she hides her own hand inside her sleeve to pretend that she's missing a hand. Mm-hmm. All that whole interaction, I was like, that's so funny. And she's just so, it tells you so much about her character. And so it's a little disappointing when they dim that light.
19. Watch your step. And watch your hands, Mr. Kirkby.
I beg your pardon?
One of these days, I'm going to shut these doors on you and...
But what I was going to say earlier, and that's why I brought up Shirley MacLaine, is that even when the energy changed and it was a little more somber, her performance and just her charisma was what really kept me watching more than anything else. And I think that
Yeah.
she gets a couple of like Oscar moments that I'm like, man, she's nailing it. There was a quote that I read that was all about like, oh, Jack Lemmon is the king here, and everybody else kind of does what they can. And I think that everybody's better than that. But if I have to call like the MVP of the movie, it would be Shirley MacLaine. I think that she's the one that really makes the movie work.
Oh yeah, Jack Lemmon's very like enchanting and whimsical, and he comes across as like a guy who would have been a movie star in the 50s and the early 60s here. And Fred McMurray is just such a dick to an almost like comical extent. But yeah, I mean the poster not the poster, but the box art that's been used from my brief research on the physical media history of this release. It's her in between the two, front and center, because this is her movie. This movie risks falling apart if you have someone who can't carry the weight that the Fran character is given.
Yes, because kind of like what I said in Concerns Corner, she becomes that person that is obsessed with the breakup and the person that's bad for them. And so she's upset with McMurray. And there is a very specific kind of frustration when there's somebody that you care for, in this case, a character that you like in a movie, and they just keep going on this self-destruction path. It's like, you know that he's a piece of shit, and yet you keep saying, I know, and I still love him. It's like, that's irksome. But she pulls it off because she is just really good. She just has that charisma. So it's great. And she has those really quiet moments where she just acknowledges everything that's happening towards the end when Jack Lemmon lies about being on a date, or he's like, oh, I have a date. I can't walk the subway with you because I have a date. And just her reaction is very muted, but it just tells you everything. And then I don't care that it's When Harry Met Sally moment, because for one, When Harry Met Sally came later. So if anything, they aped that. But that close up she has where she's clearly realizing that she needs to be with Jack Lemmon and making the decision that she's just going to get out of here right now and just run to his apartment. I mean, all that stuff is just really good. And she just sells it with her facial expressions. It's an amazing performance. That's my biggest joy after watching The Apartment, is that I got to see Shirley MacLaine, and I did not see it coming.
Yeah, it wasn't, she didn't grow into this. She always had it.
Right. Yeah. So you have 3 Billy Wilder under your belt then, Alex. You have Some Like It Hot, Double Indemnity, and The Apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, other than the black and white, can you kind of like take a step back and go, I think I can recognize some things that this guy does? Like we watch almost all of Bogdanovich's movies, and we were able to at some point just pick up some things that were kind of like everywhere. I mean, I'm asking you because I am not at that level yet, and I've watched Sunset Boulevard, so I have like a 4th one there. I don't know that I have a grasp on what Billy Wilder is as a filmmaker, other than, hey, he's made 4 movies that I really like.
Let's see here, just to be sure of that. 7 Year Itch. I think he is, just based on my experience of this, he's a filmmaker that believes in like the power of the human spirit in like regards to good, and he loves the Hollywood love story too. It's so hard to objectively say in 2024, he's a filmmaker that loves film. There's a love letter to that. That's not the type of shit you want to say about something like this, but someone had a very clear vision of how he wanted to portray interpersonal relationships in his movies. And I think from my experience with the way he makes film, there is the prevailing notion of like good, not that it necessarily wins every time per se, but that there is nobility a lot of times surrounded by not. And he also does like the mix 'em up and the situations that make something look like it makes it look like completely different from what it is. I mean, fucking Some Like It Hot, the whole movie is just like, oh, what? Yeah, I would not mind, not necessarily for the purposes of the show, but like I would not mind crafting a Bogdanian-like roadmap to go through his filmography, because it seems like the reason he makes movies, the motivations he gives his characters, et cetera, align with a lot of what I really enjoy in movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying, and it feels kind of, he's good in an old-fashioned way, which makes sense because, he's a filmmaker that has his heyday decades ago. But the feeling that I get just from like the titles I'm familiar with and the 4 movies I've watched is a little bit like when I have to define what Steven Soderbergh is like as a filmmaker. And I've seen more Soderbergh movies than I've seen Wilder movies. But like with Soderbergh, eventually, now he's known for like the big casts, right? And so you get the big ensembles, and that's kind of like a thing. But overall, and I might have made this joke maybe on our Aaron Brockovich episode, but just the idea that Soderbergh sometimes strikes me as this guy that was like, well, now I want to make a movie about this, and now I want to make a movie about this, and there's not necessarily a very apparent through line through his filmography. And I feel like maybe that's a little bit like the Billy Wilder thing when you look at the filmography. It's just like, well, he just wanted to tell this story. Because Sunset Boulevard is kind of like a noir, but it's also like a Hollywood story, like as far as like a behind the scenes, the making of a movie, because the main character is the screenwriter. The main antagonist in a way is, and the co-protagonist is an aging movie star and so on. And Double Indemnity is a full-on noir thriller. But then Some Like It Hot is a full-on comedy. And then you have The Apartment, which is half comedy, half. Would you say this is kind of like a drama?
Yeah, it's a story of the human condition.
The story of the human condition. That is the catch-all. So what is your filmography about? The human condition.
Why don't you grow up, Baxter? Be a mensch. You know what that means?
I'm not sure.
A mensch, a human being.
I was hoping that watching The Apartment, when I saw that Nerver had thrown this our way, I was like, this is awesome. Because, we did the Double Indemnity episode a while ago, and we both were very positive on it. I've done a QVR for Sunset Boulevard. Really liked it. And I watched Some Like It Hot, man, I don't know, I want to say at least 10 years ago. And I remember having a good time. And I know who Billy Wilder is. I know him, I guess, a name. But what I was hoping is that I would watch The Apartment, and then it would finally click, and I'd be able to tell you, yes, Billy Wilder is this type of director. But it hasn't quite clicked yet. I could just say, like, I can praise his work, and I can just say it's a good director and he's made movies I like. But other than that, I don't know. And of course, it has to do with like exposure to what he himself, I guess, has said about his work, right? Like with somebody like Tarantino, like you have a pretty good idea of what he is as a filmmaker, not just because of the movies that he's made, but also because he will tell you everything that's going on through his mind.
Yeah.
Before, during, and after he's made the movie. And with Bogdanovich, I mean, yes, there was a lot that we got from watching the movies, but there was also a lot of behind the scenes information that he had shared, or that people had shared, that kind of helped you fill in the blanks. I don't have that with Billy Wilder. I mean, I'm sure I could, because, the internet can be a wonderful tool. And so if I wanted to, I could get a better idea. But I kind of feel I prefer the approach of just kind of like watching the movies and then learning everything else along the way. So all this to say, well, 4 movies in for me. I watched The Apartment. I liked it. But I still, if somebody told me, hey, describe a Billy Wilder movie, all I could say is like, they're good. He likes black and white, and they're good.
Describe a Billy Wilder movie. No.
Dude, almost apropos of nothing, but the scene where Fred McMurray asks Jack Lemmon for the key for the first time, and so he's not saying it directly, he's just making the implication and letting Jack Lemmon figure it out, and Jack Lemmon is not picking up what he's saying. And then McMurray said, I was told that you were also very imaginative and very and you something like you could read between the lines. And then it clicks for Jack Lemmon, and you can see in his face that he's figured out what his boss is asking. And then he slowly reaches into his pocket, pulls out the key. He just says, this?
Well, he also is pulling out like handfuls of Kleenex because he's got that cold at that point. That's so great too. He's like, he starts, he's like, why do you think, you're worthy of this? And he's not ready for it. He goes, can you repeat the question? Also, a very small thing that happens in the closing of this movie that I really enjoyed is when he quits his job. He walks out, and on his way out, he gives his hat to the janitor.
Yeah.
I thought that was a kind of cool moment.
Puts it on him. He doesn't just give it to him. He puts it on him.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, just a closing point on our boy Billy Wilder here. I don't know. I don't know anything about what he was as a filmmaker. I know what I've seen, and when I watch the movies he's made, I can't tell if he's such a good filmmaker at just like making something to make the viewer smile, or because of the way it's aged, that like I watch this like, oh goddamn, this is what a movie's supposed to be, or this is how it's done. But I feel like it's probably more of the point one. I think it's movies made to make people happy, and that's noble. I mean, we need our Michael Hanekes, we need people like that. But when I go back and watch these, I'm like, fuck yeah, man, this is what it's about. So it sounds like we're maybe not completely in sync, but we're high on this. You enjoyed this, Julio?
Yes, I liked it a lot. I have like a little bit of a consistency issue with it in the middle, but by the time that it's all over, when it wraps up, I was all the way in again, and I was just very happy. Okay, so real talk. We're in real talk now. How do you feel about that ending? Just Jack Lemmon professing his love, over professing it in a way, and just her reaction to it is just like, all right, thanks.
Oh yeah, he blew it. He went way too hard in. No, it's great because it fits in line with her character and his character.
Yeah,
and it leaves the audience with something to be happy about, but at the same time, being like, "Well, I wonder what happened to those two crazy kids." I really enjoy it, having also been in that situation before, having it go both ways of just being like, "I love you," and then okay, or just getting like the reciprocating glance back.
Have you ever had somebody say, "I wish you hadn't said that"?
I mean, probably, but I've blocked that out.
Yeah, no, I liked it a lot. I was very happy when it was over. I was like, good Billy Wilder. You had me worried for a moment right there in the middle when the doctor wouldn't stop slapping her, and it had been more than 5 minutes and we were still talking about
that part is a bit much, but yeah.
I mean, I can see. I don't think, now that we're in real talk, I don't think it's supposed to be funny. I think that they were trying to, it felt to me like they were trying to depict the situation in a very serious manner. And that meant showing you the entire process of how you rescue her, how you bring her back. So I get it. I am going to go, Alex, with 4 stars, which might be half a star less than Double Indemnity and a full star less than Sunset Boulevard. How about you?
I went full Monty on this. I logged my letterbox review at 5 stars. This is A+. I'm going to try to track down a Blu-ray of this before next month so I can watch it again with my family for Christmas, because it does qualify as a Christmas movie. There's Christmas carols in it. Qualifies. End of discussion.
Would the inclusion of a Christmas party, a Christmas office party, would that be enough to make it a Christmas movie?
Not entirely. That Iron Claw thing I was joking about earlier, that's very loose. That's a very loose definition of it. But, a large amount of this movie happens around Christmas. So I think it's perfectly within myself, and anyone else who would do so are perfectly within their rights to celebrate this as a Christmas movie.
The fucking suicide attempt takes place on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. Sarah Jessica Parker drives into a tree in Family Stone, man. Christmas ain't all sunshine and rainbows.
Somebody watch my line. There's a swinging party on the 19th floor.
Anyway, Nerdovert, thank you for giving us another Billy Wilder experience. It turned out to be very positive. Can you fathom where we're going on our next episode?
I don't know, but I'm buckled in. Lay it on me, Julio.
We're going to space, the final frontier, a place we've gone before. on the main feed and on the Patreon. But this time, I guess we're going all the way back. We're going to do Star Trek The Motion Picture, the very first theatrical adventure for Captain Kirk and his crew. A movie that has several versions out. And I think what we're doing is the director's cut, which is the one that you can find streaming more easily. And we're not doing it by ourselves. This is a pick from patron Ryan from Spit and Polish, and also from the Yum Yum Pod. And he's bringing his co-host from Yum Yum Pod, who also happens to be his wife, who also happens to have guested on the previous episode of The Contrarians. Rachel was with us for the Waitress episode a couple of years ago. So, Rachel, Ryan, Captain Kirk, Spock, Bones, Alex, Julio. It's going to be a hell of a party.
Hell yeah.
You haven't seen this one, right, Alex?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. I've seen it once, and I had a very spirited conversation about it a long time ago with Ryan over Letterboxd. So I look forward to watching this cut, because I watched the shorter cut, and just to talk about it. I know he likes it. I don't know how Rachel feels about it, and I'm very curious to find out how you will like it, because on Patreon we watch Wrath of Khan from the original crew, and then on the main feed we did Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, and then on top of that we've done the new Trek, like the Chris Pine ones. So we've had our fair share of conversations about Star Trek. Kind of feels like it's time to go back to where it all started. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, until you put it out there, I didn't realize how many of these we've covered. So let's keep it going.
Yeah, let's do that. And then on our Patreon feed this month, it's December, so of course the bonus episode is going to be a Christmas-themed movie, as we've done the past few years. But this time it's also a throwback to a previous project that was not Christmas-themed most of the time. That is our Lohan miniseries, which kind of set us on this journey to watch the recent Lindsay Lohan outings, the ones that she's making for Netflix. So this is her third Netflix movie. It's called Our Little Secret, and it's, once again, set at Christmas. It's a romantic comedy that is being put out a month ahead of Christmas. We're going to watch it and record an episode about it just for you patrons. On the QVR front, Patron Stu from the Stewart Order is giving you, Alex, the movie Perfect Blue. I don't know what that is. That's not the surfing movie with Lois Lane, right? Kate Bosworth?
I don't believe so. Looks like it's potentially a horror anime.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got Ace Attorney. It's not Ace Ventura. Ace Attorney. Maybe that's anime too. Oh, is this Stu? Yeah, because Stu gave us Your Name.
Yeah,
a while ago. So maybe that's what he's doing. He's just like, he keeps indoctrinating us. We'll see. But that's going to be on the video review side. And then, of course, we also have Contrarians After Hours. Alex, what are you bringing to Contrarians After Hours this time?
Against my better judgment, I accompanied my sister in binging the new Netflix series on the Menendez brothers. Starring, amongst others, Javier Bardem and Chloe Sevigny.
Is Javier Bardem one of the brothers?
No, he's the dad and she's the mom. I don't know the two people that play the brothers, to be honest. Cooper Koch and Nicholas Alexander Chavez. Ari Grainer's in it too, which if longtime listeners of the Contrarians know, I thought she was going to be something at one point. So to see her here, I was like, hey, it's Ari Grainer. This is the same folks that did the Dahmer series that I also discussed on After Hours. I have thoughts.
I mean, you said against my better judgment, so that already
yeah,
that makes it sound like it's gonna be fun. All right, on my end, Alex, not binging. This is just two separate movies. One that is very recent. It's a recent release. It's called Memory of a Snail, and it's animation. I want to say it's stop motion animation, and it's from that wonderful land called Australia, which means that, keeping in tone with all the Australian movies that we've done on the show, it features a lot of different tones all throughout. Sometimes it's really funny, sometimes it's really upsetting. It is not about Snail, but it is about a young woman and just her trials and tribulations as she grows up. It was an interesting watch. And then, courtesy of our friends from Filmbusters who covered this movie and made me realize that I could stream it, Neighboring Sounds, which is from the same filmmakers that did Baccarat. So, obviously, I went into this movie Baccarat blind, and I will tell you the results on this after hours. But that's it. Neighboring Sounds, Memory of a Snail, and the Menendez Brothers saga on Netflix. That's going to be your after hours. If that sounds interesting, or anything else that we mentioned sounds interesting, check out patreon.com/ContrarianPrime and join the Contrarian Supplements. Now, Alex, let's get out of here.
Let's do. Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of '99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarians sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Corey Ari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
Just for old time's sake, I really don't